Welcome everybody to this January 3rd, 2019 Core Modules meeting. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm here. We have Andrew with us. We have David Dexter, and we have Michael Onizuka with us. So, just to review last meeting agenda. Well, there was not much to say about last meeting agenda. There was 2 module updates. So for this week, we have a new release of the form and list module, which has a bug fix for by Mr. Stefan Coleman. There was an issue with the calendar picker. There was a typo in one of the days, which broke it, so that got fixed. Now, in the unfinished business, we have automated builds. We spoke about it last meeting, and we spoke about this not in the meeting, while in a private meeting, and we now have something working. That was by Andrew and me. So we set up DevOps organization, and we set up the wiki module to use it. So let's go see how that looks.
Let's.
Sorry, I was muted. Daniel, would you like me to share my screen and go through all the pieces set up?
Sure thing. I think I need to stop my share. No, that's not it. Stop share. Go ahead.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, whole screen. All right, you guys, that is wrong. That is my shameless plug for the DNN Association. We're working on a mobile app. It's pretty cool. If you come to Summit, I'll do a talk about it. Shameless plug. All right.
Oh, that reminds me, I have work to do.
Get back to work, Dave. All right. So we have been talking over the past 6 or so months about builds and the best way to do it. And right before Christmas, Daniel and I got together to discuss some new features that Microsoft rolled out for their builds. And so what we decided to do is to make it really simple on the module maintainers is use something called build templates. So the nice thing about the build templates is the actual implementation of a build file is very simple. So with the build files, we're using these build YAML files, and it's referred to as configuration as code that Azure DevOps will be able to read and run the build without having to go in there and configure stuff through the designer. Now, the nice thing about what we're doing is we took it a step further and created these build templates, which mean all of our core modules will be able to run a very similar build with little configuration. And they're in this. So I got the build script for the wiki module opened up right now. And there's a lot of comments in here to explain what the different things are, because if you're not familiar with this stuff, it can get a little confusing quickly. But the important thing to note on this file is our build is triggered by line 26. And that's referencing a template file. So there's really no work that you need to do. You can plug in parameters if you want, which we have commented below. Like if you want to specify a version, a special configuration, if the solution is a non-standard location, you can specify those types of information. Those get passed over. But the idea is we want all of the builds to kind of work in a similar manner. We need to run an MS build. We need to create GitHub release notes. We need to, maybe there's we need to deploy it out to some website in the future to have an easy download location for all of the core modules. And as we make changes to that shared template file, none of the module maintainers will have to update it. They'll just get those for free. So since we have about 10 to 20 or so core modules, this seemed like a very good approach of create one template that could be referenced by each individual module itself. And that's all this file is doing, is it's referencing a template that we created up in Azure DevOps, which we reference through this repository section inside this file. So the next thing I wanted to show was the actual, what is the template actually doing? This file really just generates some parameters and calls that template. So before I do that, was there any questions?
Well, just to add to that, basically all the commented things on the bottom, the parameters, there's a set of default parameters. So if you leave it as is, it's gonna run what's configured in your solution file for the build, and that's it. So
Right.
there's a baseline that most modules should work directly with that. Plus, if you need to customize stuff, you can use those parameters. And you can even add jobs directly in the file, right, Andrew?
Yes. So we can add more tasks in here if we really want to. Don't quote me on the syntax because I always have to look YAML up. But if we go to edit, I should be able to do, like, I think it's task, and
Let's
then
say yarn.
Right, like do tasks like yarn, something like that. Like PowerShell task would be something like this, and then you would do, right, host, hello world, maybe that would have a display name, hello world task, and maybe, yeah. So like you can start adding more tasks in here and then run the build. You can do it before or after. You just got to make sure you get the syntax right on that.
Yeah,
Which,
and for that, you can use the DevOps UI to build your task and test it and all that, and then just copy that config into that file, and you're done.
Yeah, and I'll go over how to do that while
Cool.
showing everything to everyone here. So if we head over to dev.azure, yes, I want to leave this page. I want to go to the Dnn community. And
while we are here, I noticed one thing that could be useful too. You can have a badge on the README file.
You can have what?
A badge on the README file. There's a short code you can put.
Okay, yep.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I heard something different, so I was confused. Yes, we can add a badge onto the README file that shows the latest build status, which is useful. So if we go over to repos, before we go and take a look at our builds, this is a repository that I created that I believe needs to be up here in Azure DevOps. I have not tested it on GitHub, but that might be something we take a look at in the future if that does work. But it works here, and so what we have added here is two files. We've added this Azure Pipelines file, which is, this is the template that's being called from the Dnn Wiki build YAML. So we define some of those parameters that we saw at the bottom of the file, and we give them defaults in our case here. So, version 1.0.0.0, configuration release, any CPU solution file. Then we specify our jobs, and we specify our type of agent. So we want to make sure we build it on a machine that has MS Build, Visual Studio, and VS Test. That's called their hosted VS 2017. And then we set this up to allow us to do different types of templates from there. So not trying to make it too confusing, but the first template is just going to focus on building. We were talking the other day about doing GitHub release notes, which would be separate from building. So that when we do that, we would create another template that gets called under here that would be release or something along those lines. But we split it out that way to make it a little bit easier to add different functionality to our build that's not just focused on the build stuff. So the additional steps is part of that delivery of the module. So if we go and take a look at the build YAML now, this is really where all of the build logic happens. So we have a task for doing NuGet stuff. We have a task for running our build. We have a task for doing test. We want to copy our deliverables out to publish our build artifacts. And then we have a task that actually publishes that out to the Azure DevOps file share. And this is just the standard build that we'll need to modify as we move forward. This doesn't necessarily have everything we want right now, but this is just our starting point. And to go full circle and everything, these are the tasks that are getting ran by our build, and this is just the standard YAML syntax. So if we go now, and before I move on, and I don't expect anyone to necessarily be an expert in this stuff just by looking at it, but is there any high-level questions before I move on to the next thing I wanted to show?
No, and just a note that module developers will not need to know about all that. It's just
right, and that was the goal. Was I didn't want every module developer or maintainer to have to know how these builds work. They just need to know that they do work. And if they want to add changes to it, we'll have a couple people. We should have a couple people that understand how they work, so they can go and make changes to it or explain to other people. But it's not a requirement.
And Andrew, just to kind of connect the dots here, this is really just text version of, like, if we were going to do our own build pipeline, we're just seeing a text version of what we would normally see in the UI for a build.
Yes, exactly. The nice thing about the build YAML is it's a strong direction that Microsoft is taking with Azure DevOps. If you want a simple build, the designer works just as fine. Under the hood, the designer is using this, but with the build YAML, you have a lot more control and you have available features that you don't get with the designer. For example, the way that we're referencing these templates, as far as I understand, you can't do with the designer. You can only do it with the build YAMLs.
Cool.
All right. So we go and take a look at the DNN Wiki. So let's start with this old one. So this one was the original one that I created, which is just your standard designer layout.
This is on your fork, right? The old versus
yeah. This is referencing the fork. Yeah. So if you take a look here, these are the actual steps with our nice pretty designer, really easy to understand.
Yeah. Just above that, we have get sources. So now it's getting your fork. On the other one, it's getting the actual DNN.
Right. The thing that I wanted to show here is if I clicked on any one of these tasks individually, there's this button up here that says View YAML. And I click that, it's going to give me the YAML for that particular step right here, and I can go and copy that in. So as a good DevOps engineer, I like looking at the designer, configuring it, and then copying the code over, because I don't want to have to remember that stuff. That stuff's complicated.
Yeah, and then you can get more granular and power using from there, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, if I wanted to create this entire pipeline in YAML, I can click the pipeline at the top, and there's also a View YAML button here. And if I click that, it's going to give everything. Now, it's not going to work 100%, and there's comments in here explaining certain things, like variables didn't get created up here. I had to go and create this, but this is a great starting point. And this is how we developed that build script. Was I came in here and I clicked View YAML. So, was that a question? No? Okay. So now if we go and take a look, I'm going to leave this. The dnn community.wiki, if I hit edit, it's going to yell at us. And now it's actually going to bring us here. That's right, I turned on that feature. It's going to bring us right here where I can edit the YAML for that, which brings us back to the original one that I showed you, which is just referencing the Azure pipelines inside of the DevOps repository. So it kind of goes full circle that way. And if we go and take a look at some of the builds, this was when Daniel merged the pull request for creating this. And then all of our tasks still run the way we would expect them to run. So if we created a pull request right now on that project, it would automatically queue up a build here that we can go and take a look at.
So that right now they are triggered by pull requests.
Yes, and let's just take a look at. I want to see if I. So that's right. In the YAML, there are these triggers, and we specify that I want it to build every time there's a commit to master. I also want it to trigger every time there is a PR on a fork, and that's implied. And so we put that in the comment right here that PR builds are implied unless we want to explicitly exclude particular branches or something. And whenever PR is committed, we always want it to build the code to make sure that we can certify the code builds.
So right now on most of the modules, we use master as our release branch, and we use development to merge everything into until the release. So if you were to add development there, we would have a build, and every time we merge onto development, right?
Yeah, so if we want to do, I'll just use right here, and he said it's called develop or development?
Development.
So we did that, and this is a master. I'm just gonna save it into master.
Now that saves to GitHub?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So we hit save and run, update, I'm gonna say add build branch development.
Yeah, and if you do it as a pull request, we can see the build firing up too, right?
Let's do that. Yeah, we'll create, I'm going to create the branch name is DevOps. We'll just call it Dev.
Yeah.
I'll save and run. We have a new build that's been queued, so we can take a look at that. While that is happening, I'm going to head over to GitHub if I can get my screen back there. There we go. What is it? DNN community.
Yes.
Dnn Wiki pulls. So now if we take a look,
there's a yellow dot there.
There's a yellow dot there. So
yep.
We got a build in progress. So I come here. Oh no, it doesn't say it's verified because I did it the other way. Anyways, it says that we have the DNN community at Dnn Wiki. It's building right now. I can click details here.
And this part everybody can see even
yep.
without a DevOps account.
Correct.
And it's building.
And
yeah, and you'll actually see a link whenever you do the PR. If you wait long enough, it'll show up in the bottom of the PR there.
Right, so we go and go back to our pull request here. So if I click, so it's completed.
And now that's good for testers because they could just download that artifact and give it a go.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They'd be able to download that artifact. I'm not sure if we're publishing that, what's actually in the drop here. Let's take a look. Right, we did put the installer in. So the installer is there so people can download it and take a look at it. So if I create this massive pull request with all these changes, the goal here is there will be an installer released with it that everyone can go and take a look at and try installing on their sandbox DNN instances.
Awesome.
Which is powerful. So now.
Yeah. Now I'd like to add the badge.
The badge, right?
Yeah, it's in. I think it's in the pipeline settings. There's a code you can.
Yes, there is. So we go here and we hit edit.
Just looks nice, you know.
Yeah, we'll add that one in too. We'll make it a live coding session.
Badges were
Yeah.
such a mystery to me for a long time. I was like, well, how does it know?
Could it be in the little 3 dots menu, I think? No.
No, there's another thing. There's another window that's missing here. Build completion, build schedule, override. I think we got to go to the project.
We'll find it.
I think it's actually on the project.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, okay, you're there. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Let's take a look. No, retention and parallel jobs, maybe. No. I will figure it out. I'm not gonna.
I don't remember now.
I know it's easy to find when you do designer, but excuse me, I will take a look and see if I can figure that out. The other thing that I wanted to show everyone while I got the room. So if we come over here now, we've now created this. It's been successful. Is it okay if I merge this in, Dan?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'm going to merge this pull request. So this is targeting master. So if we confirm this change, what's going to happen now is that's going to kick another build because we just pushed it to master. And the other thing that's going to happen now is if I create a new pull request. So let's say I wanted to edit this file. We're going to reject this, but let's just say I came in here to use change. And I'm going to create a pull request. That's not going to do it the way I wanted to do it. Now let's try it. I wanted to try targeting a pull request towards the development branch. So let's see if it does.
I think you started on master. You would have to.
Yeah, so if I do development, and I create this pull request, we'll abandon it, but whoa, there's a lot of changes in there.
Yeah, because master is probably very different than development right now. Probably. Is the default branch master or development on this one?
I think it's a master on this one. So let's just say we did it this way. This is targeting the development branch. That should be kicking a build, but I'm not seeing it fire. There it goes.
There we go.
So now when people submit their pull requests against the development branch, they'll also get the correct CI is happening. So that's good. I'm going to close this pull request because I don't want to merge. Close pull request. All right.
Yeah, very cool.
Let me just clean up my branches, and that is pretty much everything I wanted to show. Is there any questions about what I just went over?
Now, for the other modules, we still need to, it's not just putting the YAML, we need to add them in DevOps.
Right. So because we're doing it through GitHub, there is still a step that needs to be done. We need to add the YAML, and then we need to add the linking between the two. So the best way to do that is, what's the module we want to set up? We can try it out and see if it works.
I would progressively add them as we work on them, but let's take something like super simple, like the FAQ module.
Okay, and what we do is we could cut out this part of the video, Daniel, and create it and send it to the other developers as a little training video for them.
Yeah, well, we can always reference.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're really going to be doing this, honestly.
I think we're going to be doing this. Yeah.
Okay. Either way, so
David, do you need access to the DevOps?
I was going to ask about that later. I don't think I
Okay.
have access to that. Yeah.
All right. I will double check. We'll double check that at the end. So what you do is you come in here and click New Build Pipeline. So to get to the screen, you log in, come to Community Modules, go to Pipelines, click New Build Pipeline. It's going to default to using Yamo, so we don't really need to worry about that too much. So you just come here and click GitHub. And it's going to use my auth authorization. And then we're going to do dnn community /
dnn.fac.
There's a dnn dot what fact?
I don't know if it's case sensitive, but it's dnn.fac, FAQ.
Oh, FAQ.
Yep.
All right. So now, when you get here, is there an empty one? At the bottom, there's starter pipeline. You're going to copy over another one. So you start.
On my side, I use the ASP.NET.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter which one
matter.
you pick because what's going to happen is.
Oh, you're going to paste here your thing.
Yeah, we're going to come over here and look at the original one that we used. And I'm just
now that template. Should we put this on the DNN community? What's the name of that project?
Home? You don't know?
Yeah, DNN community home.
Why don't we just put this in its own repo?
We could do that too.
Maybe.
Well, what we could do is we could put this inside of the DevOps repo that we have here, since we'll all have access to that.
Oh yeah, it's true.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
So what we'll do, and we'll like label it as a starter template. So you just copy and paste that in here, and that should be it. We shouldn't have to do anything else.
Yep.
So I'm gonna hit save and run.
Makes sense.
And that's gonna automatically save it to that GitHub repo at the same time, right?
Yes. So I'm gonna create a new branch called that, and you have to create. If I remember correctly, you have to create it this way. Otherwise, because doing this not only creates the Azure Pipelines YAML file, but it also creates a linkage between Azure DevOps and your GitHub repository.
Mm-hmm.
That's the important part. So I'm going to create a branch called DevOps in the FAQ project. We're going to hit save and run. Unable to, this is likely caused by not having, I guess I do not have the necessary permissions to generate the hooks on the project.
Let me fix you that.
That would be the problem.
I thought somebody made me an owner on the community project, but maybe not.
I think I put you on that specific repository, but I'm gonna put you on everything.
I think adding to our
Keys to the
team.
castle.
People. Andrew. Yeah, you're member. Change role. It's taking some time for some reason. Oh, I have to use my two-step verification. Oh no, it worked. Okay.
All right, so let's try it again. Save and run. Create a branch. Save and run. Configuring. The wheel is spinning. There we go. Perfect.
Awesome.
And this is good that we went through that step. So we could already tell it's pulling the correct file because it's on the hosted VS 2017. We scroll down. We have all the build steps that are shared between them. So that's good. That's powerful.
Yeah, so if it builds, it was a couple seconds. If it doesn't, then we need to check, what fails and
I'm
jump forward.
seeing the DevOps branch on that repo. So
Right, and if this builds, we'll just merge that into to master or development, whichever one. Because I think this is creating the pull request against master, so we can always.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
no, actually, it's against development.
Yeah,
Sorry.
whatever is
Yeah,
Whatever the default is, I guess.
yeah. On the wiki project, the main was master, which I think we need to change. Perfect. So I'm going to head over to GitHub now.
Yep, looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to merge it. I want to merge it. I want to merge it.
I didn't add that image. Oh, somebody edited it. Said it was edited by somebody else.
No. That's a hook that Ernst Peter has set up on it. This code review hub thing that is also triggering something, but
Oh, that's funny.
some of these repos have that on it.
Now,
So yeah, this is targeting the development branch, so we can get that checked in. And
I don't see the artifacts. Why?
Could be related to the build in this particular project.
Yeah, so that project would need adjusting.
Right, but we got the build there now, so we get that
Yeah.
merged both master and development. We have the build working, and as you make the changes, the artifact should be populating there if they follow the standard.
Yeah, there's a warning. Nothing will be added to build artifacts drop. Yeah, so we would need to see where the output of that build gets and see if we need adjusting the YAML template so that the build directory can be specified in the YAML.
So Dave, did you want to merge this pull request?
Oh my! No, go ahead. I'm just messing with you.
We'll merge that one in.
Yeah, it looks like there's a targets issue on this one. Let's see.
So that's taken care of. And do we, Daniel? Do we want to merge development into master right now, or wait for that?
No, just when we publish a release.
Okay. And what we could do is we can expand our template to check against master, and when we do merge stuff to master, that's when it can generate the GitHub release notes. So we can specify, so we can have it check, the state. Is it just a development merge or is it a master merge?
Yep.
Cool. Well, that works. That's kind of all the stuff that I wanted to show.
Yep, that's awesome. So yeah, so for this specific module, the build script outputs to some folder. So we would have to check in details why.
Yeah, it goes to a D drive, and I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, I'm going to put an issue here. New issue. Artifacts are published. Oh, I'm gonna restart. You have anything else to show on screen, Andrew? Gonna restart sharing my screen. just so we don't forget to go fix that at some point. Cool. So that's good.
Dave, I'm sorry, before I forget, Dave, you should have access to the DNN community Azure DevOps organization.
Okay, I'll check now.
Awesome. So automatic release notes, that was started by EPT as a subject. I know it kind of mixes a little bit with automated builds because that's something we could integrate in the template. And I heard this week someone, was it you, David, that
Yes.
had something on it? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yep.
We're all ears.
I'm ready to show my screen when you get
Cool.
a chance.
Ready for you.
Yep, I'm trying to share it. It's too many windows. All right. Okay, everybody see that all right?
Yep.
Okay, so what I did is I went and researched a bunch of different tools out there and solutions for automating release notes, just to really see if this was something that warrants further work, investigation on. And I ran across this project that seems to be the real winner in this area. And I think, looking at some of the requirements I've heard over the last few times that we've talked about this, is that we like the idea of it being automated to reduce time and all that, but we also want the ability to edit those and tweak those as we see fit, after the fact. And what I really loved about this tool, and I'll pull up their documentation if I can get the Zoom controls out of my way, is here. And what it is it's essentially a node package that you can install globally on your local machine. And it gives you a grin command that you can run these commands. And you can be in the repo that you're wanting to use Grin against, but you don't have to. You could really be in any directory. You just have to provide some additional parameters or so forth to state which repos you're working with. But essentially, I'll kind of jump to the fun stuff. It'll create releases really shaped any way that you want, but this is actual releases, and this is a similar format that I'll show you how it kind of works. But I had to dig deep. I mean, there's like a way to do it just out of the box without any real configuration and all that, but it's not as pretty of an output. And it's impressive what it does, but it also brings to question some things. And I'll get into that once you see the output. But like in this case, this is issues-based releases. And you basically have two choices. You have issues-based and you have commits-based. And you can do all kinds of things within those two contexts. But if you choose issues, then ultimately this is going to be the title of the issue that has been closed since the last release. So this links right to the issue, but you can already probably see the challenge with this. You got to write good titles here. So what they've done is they've actually provided some guidelines on how to write good issues by just following a standard set of rules, like a title that starts with a verb, like change, and then put what you're changing, and then using an imperative mood in the title, not the past tense or, gerund phrase on it or the, what you're doing right now, but using change instead of changes or changed, whatever. And then using labels wisely when you create the issues so that, if we follow a general rule of having one label per issue, that's a really good one. Sometimes there's use cases where we may need more labels for a particular issue. It really just depends on how how the owner of the project's running it. But I think it's a good model to follow. But you can also set up rules, which I'll show you in a bit, on how to ignore certain issues or certain labels, as well as giving you a priority or an order at which it gives preference to certain labels. So if you have two labels that are part of the output, it will it'll take preference over one over the other.
If I understand correctly, that's what groups them in bug fixes and enhancements.
I'll show you the grouping. That is a power
Okay.
feature. It's a configuration issue or a configuration ability that I'll show you a config file in just a minute. So, so yeah, that, issues based kind of produces something like this, where you can group issues together and give them very specific titles to those issues. And I found this to be really the preferred way to go is with this. But the out of the box output doesn't do it this way at all. It'll group things together sort of by the label, and it'll not use, pretty titles here like this. So that's where the config comes in, where you can assign nice human-friendly titles to certain issues or issue labels. So what you end up doing, and I won't go into a whole lot of detail here just for sake of time, because I know we're running kind of short, but if you go through the examples here, you'll see some of the different things you can do with the grin command, getting help, getting the version. But this is really where it's all going to come down to, is if you're outside of the project folder, then you would have to run with a username parameter here, as well as a repo parameter to tell it exactly what repo you're using. But if you're inside of the project folder, then you simply run grin release if you want it to just do what your latest tag is or latest release is. But what I found myself doing was grin release and then specifying the tag that I want. So what this allowed me to do is I used our MV Quick theme repo as a guinea pig for all this, because I really like the idea of it. So over in the releases area, I had a bunch of stuff in here, but what you see now is nice and formatted type output here that comes from Grin. But I was able to go all the way back to the beginning and recreate the release notes. So what I was able to do was, and I needed to have a little bit of a warm fuzzy, because the documentation, while it's good and it's sufficient, it leaves a little bit of smoke and mirrors, to there, because you're not really sure what's really happening. Like I didn't realize at the beginning, oh, this is really just calling the GitHub API to update the release, and it's based on tags and so forth. But I didn't know all that really at first. So I really needed to kind of kick the tires and have a good comfort factor in using it. But so I went in and manually edited my releases, copied what I had in there off to another file, then ran the command against it to see what it did. And I was playing around with the formatting and all that until I realized, oh, okay, this is not anything that's tied into my Git flow at all. It's something that you do after the fact. You could put it a part of a build process. You could, a release pipeline, or just do it manually and just use this as a tool to get you started. But I still have the ability, even though these were generated from the Grin command, I can still come in here and edit these manually and do what I want to with them, just like you always have been able to do. So there's a lot more details to kind of dig into, but that gives you a quick overview. The other thing that I'll show you is the config side of things. And this is the NV Quick Theme project here. And I'll make this bigger so we can kind of see this a bit better. Everybody see that okay?
How do you do that?
Control plus, control minus.
Dave, a good question for you.
Yeah.
So this configuration JS file, this is all that's needed to configure it correctly, correct?
For the configuration to control the output, yes. And you don't even have to have this.
Okay.
This just gives you more granular control. So like, for instance, we talked about the different groupings. I went through every single label that we have in our system, and I defined human-friendly names for each of those. So on the won't fix label, it'll actually put won't fix, and as a header of that section.
Understood.
So it handles that. You can configure this so that it only includes issues that are associated with a milestone. So if you use milestones in your repo, this is a great way to limit it from being cluttered up with every single issue under the sun. A lot of people like to ignore certain issues, so you can actually tell it to ignore, won't fix or help wanted or invalid, ones that you've already labeled as something that's not good. I played around with that, but in the end, I just decided to include everything until until I decided to start excluding stuff. You can also use Grin to generate a changelog physical file for your repo. So this defines the name of it. I'm not actually generating the file in mine, but I could, and that can be part of a tracked file as well if you want to. Basically, that includes your entire version history. So it will do something like, if I can get back over to this, if we look at their changelog, it does the same thing, but it's got the entire history.
Oh, that's nice.
So I have another question, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're showing this to us, first thing I'm thinking is how are we going to integrate this in a way that makes it really easy for the module developers to manage their release note configuration. And what I was thinking is, what if we set it up so we create some type of base configuration file, and if the build does not find a configuration file in the project, it'll use a shared base one. But if they do find one, it'll use that one and where I'm going with this is, what if we set it up so the developers don't have to worry about adding this into their project at all? It's just they have the configuration file there, and then the build pipeline looks for it and runs it.
Yeah, they don't even have to have the configuration file, and there are multiple options for the configuration file as well.
Okay.
It can be, I chose the JavaScript version of it because that gives you the most power. But you can actually do that as any of these 5 options, which grin.rc, grin.json, grin.yaml, a full YAML, and JavaScript. But JavaScript allows you to actually put some logic in there. For instance, if you wanted to have a function in there for manipulating the labels and converting them to lowercase and things like that. So
Gotcha.
do all kinds of cool stuff. So I went with the JS route, but
so we could,
you don't have to do that.
For instance, take any label that includes bug in lowercase. So it's either bug lowercase or with uppercase or bug report or whatever. It's going to grab them all into bugs.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool.
And this is kind of how you do the preferences, where like if a bug has enhancement and the internal label, then it will show just under the enhancements group by. So
that's not or.
No, that's if it is or actually, yeah. If it has either of those, it'll include it into the enhancements group by. But if like, let me flip back over to my file. So if a label has enhancement and help wanted on it, which would be a realistic situation, it'll put that issue under enhancement because it's higher up in the group by order.
Cool.
That's the way it kind of handles that. But I kind of like their methodology of, only using one label per issue in the end. Like you might temporarily, like for us, I'll remove the help wanted label before I generate my, on the issues before I generate my release notes, because I don't need help anymore. It's already been done. So
Well, let's say you remove that line, because just for the release. If you were to remove that line and an issue had only that tag,
it would not
then
show
it
up in
will
the
not
release.
show up in the release notes. Okay.
Yeah, but there's a better way to
Is
do
there a
that.
catch-all?
Yeah, you could actually exclude that label from it. You can do it by not putting it in the group by, or there's actually another parameter in the JSON. I have to look it up here, but there's a way to exclude.
My question was more if an issue has no labels at all, it's still getting on
Yeah,
a other
actually,
category or something?
in the back end, it actually does have a label, and that's where when I was first playing with this, I couldn't get anything to show up. And now I realized, oh, they all have a label. There's something that GitHub does behind the scenes that actually puts and I can't remember what it's called now because I don't have any left. I cleaned everything up.
Closed? Is this here?
Closed, yes, that's it.
Yeah, I just saw it on the code sample on the bottom one. You go back to that tab. On the second code sample where you have templates. A little
yes.
lower, yeah. No label, closed.
Oh yeah, that's what it does. It actually puts that in there.
That catches
So
the ones that don't have anything else. Okay, cool.
Exactly. So, it actually ends up being quite simple. And since now I've got everything in here, I don't need to have everything in here because we're only using the issues output, but this formats the issue for me. So for me, I wanted it to be a link to using the number for the issue, and then I want that to link over to URL with the name in it. So it's excuse me, I'm pointing out the wrong thing. This is it. Sorry. In release. This is what kind of controls the output, so nope, that's the header of it. I'm getting my bearings back here. There is this is after. That's the actual link for the issue itself. And then the URL is, oops, I'm losing my window here. Where was it? Okay. Go back to MV quick theme. Yeah, so each bullet point gets that URL with the issue number in it, and then the name of it, which is the title of the issue. So this exposes another problem and another kind of issue that, it raises questions, especially on a bigger repo like platform or the admin experience. It's like, well, who's going to police that? And my thought is you just handle it ad hoc as issues come in. If an issue doesn't have a good title on it, then it's either the project owner's responsibility to change it or ask the person to change it, and then over time, and then publish guidelines on how to write good ones.
Or you can just take whatever is generated and change it manually.
That's right. You could do that, but you have to do that at the issue level, and that's I did that on a few of them. Well, because this is an issue. Well, you can't. That's the thing. You've got to actually go to the issue itself, edit it.
It's going to regenerate the release notes?
It will not regenerate the release notes until you run the command.
But if you just go in the release and change the text, it doesn't.
Oh, you could do it there.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So we could use it as
I wouldn't recommend that though, because if you ever run the command again, it's going to overwrite what you manually edited there.
When you run the command, it does it for all the tags.
No, it only does it. Well, if you target a specific tag, it'll just go to that tag.
If you run it without arguments, it's going to generate all.
It can, yes. So that's why I wouldn't edit it right here in the release notes. I would actually edit the issue.
Yeah, we can go clean up the issue titles. Yeah.
I mean, once I really realized what was going on here, that it was really just updating the releases and it didn't impact any of my code state or anything like that, I realized, oh, okay, so my normal workflow would probably be just to generate the release notes, see what it looks like in the draft, I guess, of it, and then go and clean things up, rerun the release notes, and I'm done.
Yeah, makes sense.
But obviously, the bigger the repo, the more challenging that becomes. So having good documentation and trying your best to enforce that is probably the right way to go. Any questions before I stop sharing my screen?
Now, let's say we try to link the two subjects that we had on this meeting, which is automated. Well, this generates the release notes automatically. If we want to put that in our Azure pipeline, that's a node module. Can we have that in the template, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm already working on it.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention, I'm glad you brought that up because it triggered my thought on this. The only thing that, you can see in the config file, there's nothing sensitive in there.
Mm-hmm.
But you may be asking yourself, well, how does it connect to the API? Well, the way that theirs works is a personal access token. So it would be the responsibility of the project owner to create their own personal access token, and I can kind of show where that is if you
unless we include it in the CI.
Right, you could, you could do that because you can actually pass it in as a parameter as well, the token itself. So that's probably the right way to do it. We just need to make sure not to expose that, outside of the Azure world, I guess. But yeah, you can actually put the token in the command itself. But that's done through, if you go to your settings and go under developer settings, and then you got personal access tokens, and you can see I've created a couple here just to play around with. And you generate a new token, give it a name, and then in the instructions here, they show you can actually add that to your local bash profile or your ZS HRC, I think is what it's called on Windows, or bash RC, and you add the sorry, I should probably go to the repo. They've got a little bit better notes on the repo's README file. But here, yeah, you add this line to your config file if you don't want to pass it in the command itself. But otherwise, you can actually put it right in the command with a token parameter.
So we could have on the CI and the default template, on the project template, we would have a parameter to opt into that feature that would be commented by default. So by default, it wouldn't do nothing. If you uncomment that line, you opt in to that feature, and the CI is going to generate your release notes. Now, will that should not fire? Yeah, that should fire only when you actually publish a release.
That's right.
Yeah, there's some.
The thing is, you're going to probably still want to use your command line to make edits if you didn't clean things up when you invoke the release. So we probably ought to find a way to document how to run the commands yourself as well.
Well, I think for this meeting we got a good preview of it, and on next meeting we can look at integrating both together.
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay. So if I go back to where's the controls?
Oh, hi, Ernst Peter.
Yeah.
Hey.
Sorry, I was off for 1 hour. I thought it would start at 10 o'clock in the evening for me, but you started at 9 o'clock. Still a
We're
bit
tricky
lost.
like that.
Yeah.
It's the hours exchange rate changed.
Did you do a recording? Did you do a recording of the session?
Yep.
Okay.
So does
You're
it
in
do,
it. Smile at your own candy camera.
so that was called Git release notes, GitHub release notes.
That's correct. It's called GitHub-release-notes. And it's under the GitHub-tools organization. I can send you a link here.
Nope. So we will be looking into integrating this into.
Oh, guys, I just realized I'm missing our next meeting. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to drop.
No problem. We're closing up anyway. So have a good day, and
Thanks.
we'll see you later. On the things that were left in the agenda, we're running out of time, so there was nothing new regarding the vendor's banner module. It's still in progress, still postponed to whenever we have time. Same thing for the site log module, the blog module. Same thing, postpone. And that's it. Anything else that needs to be on this meeting, or we see ourselves in 2 weeks? We're all good. So thanks for attending. Next
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Before we go, when I go to take a look at integrating what Poindexter just showed us into the build pipelines, is it okay if I accidentally trigger some releases on the wiki project?
Does the wiki project have a specific maintainer?
I just figured I'd use that one since that was the one I've been working against.
There's no specific maintainer, so go ahead.
Okay.
Nothing of what you're doing will affect the code anyway, so.
Yep, and I'll just continue with against the master branch like I've been, and we'll hopefully sync that up with the development branch later.
That's awesome.
It should be relatively simple to get that in. I'll hopefully have it for the next meeting.
Cool. So thanks for attending, and we'll see ourselves in 2 weeks, which will be on the 17th. Also, I am a bit late publishing the videos. I'm gonna try to get to it this week, but I think I'm 2 videos late. So have a good week, and see you next time.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks.
See you later.